Just think about it for a second. The whole global economic engine just humming along, powering the factories that make our phones, the ships that bring us our coffee, and then bam, someone just yanks the main fuel line. What happens? Absolute panic, a desperate scramble, and this chilling realization that the whole system we rely on is so much more fragile than any of us ever thought. Well, this isn't some movie plot. It's exactly what world leaders are facing right now. A conflict in one part of the world is sending shockwaves everywhere, and it's threatening to change the price of, well, everything. Okay, let's get into it.
So what's it really like when the most powerful economic minds on the planet get together to face a crisis that's spinning out of their control? Sometimes the most complicated, scary situations, they get boiled down to just one word. When a G20 official was asked to describe the mood at the big IMF meeting in Washington, this was their answer. Somber. That one word, it just tells you everything you need to know about the fear and the uncertainty at the very highest levels of power.
And this number, this is the reason why. 13 million. That's the number at the very heart of this crisis. I mean, to put that into perspective for you, that's more than half of all the oil the United States uses in a day. 13 million barrels of crude oil that, poof, just vanished from the global market because the Strait of Hormuz was shut down. Not for a week, not for a month, gone. Every single day. It is an absolutely mind-blowing shock to the entire system. And a shock that big, it gives the entire world whiplash. It has forced this sudden, almost violent shift in what everyone's worried about. It makes the big topics from just a few months ago seem like they're from a completely different lifetime. I mean, look at this contrast. It's incredible. Just think back to January in Davos. The big global conversation, a lot of it driven by the US, was all about tariffs and defense spending. And yeah, even that bizarre idea of buying Greenland. Now, fast forward to last week in Washington. That whole agenda? Wiped clean. Now it's all about the war fallout, global economic alarm bells are ringing, and there's just this desperate scramble to find any kind of solution. It just goes to show you how fast the world can be forced to focus on what really, truly matters. Okay, so let's dig a little deeper into that 13 million barrel hole in the market. See, when a critical choke point, like the Strait of Hormuz, gets shut down, the pain is not spread out evenly. Some countries are right on the economic front lines, and they're feeling it first and worst. So who gets squeezed first? It's the Asian countries that have to import their energy. Think about places like Vietnam and Thailand. Their economies are just thirsty for energy that they don't produce themselves. But then you have these other, more complicated problems. Take South Korea, for example. They have this huge, really sophisticated refinery complex, but here's the catch. It's specifically built to process the kind of heavy crude that comes out of the Middle East. So for them, it's not just that supply is tight, their entire infrastructure is suddenly facing a crisis.
And all of this immediate pain has kicked off what you can only call a global scramble. We're past the point of making 5-year plans. Right now, nations are reacting in real time, just trying to protect themselves from a crisis that's already here and, could get a whole lot worse.
So the people in charge are basically looking at two potential futures right now. The adverse scenario, that's the bad one. Oil prices shoot up 80%, gas is up 160%, which means way, way higher prices at the pump and for heating your home. And a slow recovery doesn't even start until 2027. But then there's the severe scenario, and that's the nightmare. Oil prices double, gas prices triple, and there's basically no relief in sight through 2027. This really shows you the razor's edge the entire global economy is on right now. So what do you do when you're staring down that kind of threat? Well, you start building walls. You rush to create redundancy. Nations are now stockpiling everything from basic commodities to fertilizer. They're pouring money into these hugely expensive projects, like retooling entire refineries to handle different kinds of oil or building brand new pipelines. And maybe the most important thing, they are slamming the accelerator on renewable energy. And you can actually hear this massive shift in what leaders are saying out loud. This quote from Thailand's deputy prime minister. It just says it all. We've learned the lesson that we depend too much on oil and gas. Now, that's not just a nice-sounding line for the cameras. That is a public admission of a massive systemic failure. And it's a promise that things have to change for good. But here's where it gets really interesting. Because even in a global crisis that hurts almost everybody, the sheer scale of the disruption creates these strange and unexpected opportunities. The old economic map gets redrawn in ways that nobody could have possibly seen coming. And this is a perfect example. Pakistan managed to stay neutral, and because of that, its port in Karachi saw this unbelievable economic boom. Since it's located just outside the conflict zone, it suddenly became this critical, safe hub. Just look at these numbers. In the first 25 days of the war, that port handled more transshipment volume, that's cargo getting moved from one ship to another, than it did in the entire year of 2025. It's an absolutely incredible side effect of all this chaos.
And all of these unexpected shifts, they're all building toward the final and really the most important point here. This crisis isn't some temporary storm that we can just ride out. No, this is fundamentally and permanently changing who holds the economic power around the world.
So here's the bottom line. The old reality, a world running on Middle Eastern oil and gas where the US was a central player, that world is crumbling. And in its place, a new reality is rising, one defined by this massive urgent push into renewables. But, and this is a huge but, that just creates new dependencies. As the world pivots away from oil, it's pivoting toward the technologies of the future. And right now, China is the undisputed superpower when it comes to manufacturing solar panels, batteries, and all the critical minerals you need to make them work.
Which brings us to the big question we're left with. A crisis this huge always forces change. That's a given. But as the dust begins to settle, we have to ask ourselves, is the world scrambling towards a genuinely more secure, more resilient future? Or are we just trading one very dangerous dependency for another?